Hey there, welcome back to Board 3D. I'm Kurt, and today we're making the Kingdom Key from Kingdom Hearts. Wow, has this been a long project in the making. I actually started this before last summer. It took me a few months to finish. It's not a particularly tough project as always. It's very simple. It's just several 3D printed parts. It's just that time is always an issue. It was very good working with different materials. We've got PVC pipes, both as the center core and as the main body for the key. We've got 3D printed PLA parts for the teeth of the key, for the handle guard, and for Mickey Mouse's keychain. Worked with a bit of metal chain, nothing big there. Leather, which was stained black, and a bit of EVA foam for color, for an accent. This was commissioned by my good friend Ishmael, who always asks me to make these really cool ideas for props. I've done several projects for Ishmael. Most of them have been uploaded on my Instagram page, so go check it out if you haven't. So thank you, Ishmael.
As with many of my projects, even those that do not involve 3D printing, it all starts in Fusion 360. I created a scale model of the Kingdom Key using several screenshots from the game as reference. I designed the handguard first, which was the trickiest to do at the time. In projects with many parts, I find that it's always better to start off with the tough part first, because you can knock it out while you're still energetic and fresh. Later on in the process, it's easier to make mistakes because you get tired or distracted, and I find it can lead to a bit of frustration. I already had the diameter of the pipe I was going to use, and I designed the teeth of the key to wrap around the pipe to have a good surface to glue up. The keychain was designed last. I started the fabrication by cutting the lengths of pipe I needed. I used 30mm PVC pipe and 10 or 15mm for the inner core. This turned out to be the perfect size for the prop. I used a spare piece of PVC pipe to cut out some EVA foam. All it takes is some elbow grease. I carved a hole in this piece of foam using a Forstner bit. This kept the end that goes towards the handle. These pieces also fill in the gap between the inner and outer pipe, giving it some support. Super glue was used to stick them in place, which for some reason gets very hot when used with EVA foam. The same technique was used to cap off the end of the tube. I applied super glue to the rough parts of the printed handle guard and dusted it with loads of talcum powder. This creates a paste that fills in gaps and sands down nicely, leaving a nice surface to paint on. It's a great technique to also fill in the seam between two parts instead of using a filler like Bondo. It's a quick and easy technique, but you always run the risk of sticking your fingers together, so use at your discretion. Following this, the long and arduous task of sanding began. Not just the sanding of the pasted areas, but sanding down all of the layer lines. My local hardware store did not have any filler primer at the time, so I had to make do without, but after hours of sanding, the print was adequate. As it happened, I designed the handle guard to fit a bit too snugly against the inner diameter pipe, so I didn't trust super glue. Instead, I mixed a small amount of 5-minute epoxy. I often mix my epoxy on some duct tape or masking tape. It makes it easier for cleanup afterwards. This stuff stinks, so make sure to use in a well-ventilated area. At the time, the garage door was open and there was plenty of circulation. The glue was applied to the printed pieces and held in place with as many clamps as I had. I used the same gluing technique to stick the keyblade's teeth to the PVC tube. The main construction of the keyblade was done, so it was time to start painting. I should have used a primer here, but the surface was just rough enough to grab onto the spray paint. I also gave the handle about 5 or 6 coats of yellow paint, and it turned out just fine. Once completely dry, I masked the handle guard with some saran wrap and gave the main body of the keyblade a couple of coats of bright metallic silver spray paint. This made it look super awesome and just shiny enough to not look like a fake chromic piece of plastic. A few months later, when I resumed this project, I used a filler primer on the Mickey Mouse keychain. A good technique to help spray paint dry quickly is to blast it with a hairdryer. It's a technique I've used before and I use my heat gun because it has a low setting. From a quick online search, I found that the temperature for a hairdryer is about 50 Celsius. So I set my heat gun to that temperature every time I'm drying spray paint. The exact same spray paint as the main body of the keyblade was used to match. I drilled 2 tiny holes using my rotary tool so that I could attach the chain to the handle guard. I checked that it fit in properly and then mixed a small amount of 5-minute epoxy. I filled the holes with epoxy and put in the chain. The first link of the chain was sawed in half, so it was more of a U-shape. Here's how that looks. I used super glue to stick the leather handle wrap to the PVC pipe. I had stained this leather months in advance as a test for another project, but it was perfect for this prop. I also folded one end of the leather so that it wouldn't look all scruffy when it's done wrapping. The same technique was used to wrap some blue EVA foam in the transition between the handle guard and the main body of the keyblade. This matches a lot of the screenshots I found, and it added a nice bit of color to the prop. The last step was to put on the keychain using a large ring, and then the prop was finished.
It's been very good getting back into making stuff, into finishing this kind of project, and if you will have a look behind me, there are several other projects that I'm still working on, but I'm working a bit on at my own pace. Most of my prop projects will be uploaded on Instagram and even on my Facebook page, which you'll find in the links down below. As always, you will find the write-up for this project up on my website borch2d.net. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter for more behind the scenes and a couple of bloopers. Just as I have been inspired by other makers out there to come in my garage and make something, hope that you too can make something as well. Because everyone is a maker.